Everyone, welcome back again. This will be our final portion of the workshop here. So before we get started with the certification process, I wanted to answer one question that came up from Michael asking about accessing the ERP template tool. So a link to the template should be in the resource document for that ERP template. And once you download the PDF, in order to access the Word document portion, you're going to need to download that PDF not to your browser, so not where it's open in your web browser like Internet Explorer, Chrome or something, but you're going to need to download it to your computer and open the PDF from your, whatever your PDF reader is, and you'll be able to click on that Word document there. I know that's a little more complicated, but for whatever reason, when you try to open the Word document from your web browser, it won't open. So I hope that answers your question, but that's hopefully useful information for everyone else as well. Okay, I don't see any other questions that came in right now, so we're going to walk through section 4, which is how to certify your risk assessment and emergency response plan. Now that we've talked about, you know, the processes and tools and resources we have available to actually complete them, now you're at the point where you're ready to certify them. And so when you do that, these are just reminders of the dates that you need to certify by. So for the medium systems, December 31st, 2020, and for the small systems, June 30th, 2021. So they are coming up. And then your ERP certifications are due no later than 6 months after certification of the risk assessment. So whatever date you certify the risk assessment, you should certify your ERP 6 months thereafter. So for example, if you certify completion of a risk assessment on July 30th, 2021, then the certification of your response plan is due later than January 31st, 2021. And again, this AWIA Section 2013 requires recertification of completion of your ERP and risk assessment, and so every 5 years, and you can find the dates here. So that first next 5-year cycle submission date is March 31st, 2025 for large systems, December 31st, 2025 for medium systems, and June 30th, 2026 for small systems. And this date is not based on when you initially certified, but it's the date set in stone here on this slide. And it can also be found on our AWIA Section 2013 webpage. Again, with this, we cannot change the statutory deadline set in Section 1433. So if a community water system fails to certify, conducted the required assessment or plan, preparation or revisions by the applicable deadline, then it is in non-compliance. Of course, our main goal is compliance, so we will have, I'm sure, more workshops closer to the next 5-year cycle recertification date. And this question comes up quite a bit, just asking how we determine population service size for water utilities. And EPA determined the population of each utility based on what was in the Safe Drinking Water Act information system, which many of you are probably familiar with. It's the SIDWIS database. And we pulled those numbers from the 4th quarter of 2018 because that was the date the law was signed. And this information that is in the SIDWIS database is entered by your state primacy agency. Again, if you don't know your size, your population service size, please ask us after the training and we can provide that information to you. And then this question gets asked sometimes as well about wholesale systems. So we don't have, or the data in the federal SIDWIS database doesn't have population service size for wholesale systems, but that population service size would come from the total amount of population served of all the systems you sell water to. So for example, if you wholesale water to a utility with a population size of 25,000, and then you also wholesale water to another utility with a population service size of 50,000, and your total population service size as a wholesaler is 75,000, and you would need to comply with your risk assessment certification by that median deadline of December 31st, 2020. And again, you will not need to complete a risk assessment or emergency response plan for those utilities that you service, that you're selling water to. Only the portion of your utility that can be impacted by that system. And there are 3 ways to certify completion of your risk assessment and emergency response plan. It's the same process for both of them. And these include the secure online electronic submission, which is the most preferred method and is the easiest to complete. And if you do certify electronically, it will provide you with reminders of those upcoming 5-year recertification deadlines and a confirmation email for your records. So the only way you'll receive an email that EPA has received your certification is if you use our electronic portal. And we'll go over how to certify electronically in just a minute. But we do recommend that way just so you have a record of receipt. Otherwise, you can email, there'll be a certification form you'll have to complete, and you can email that in, and I'll provide you that email in just a moment, and you can also US mail in your certification. Okay, so now we're going to watch a tutorial on how you can electronically certify completion of your risk assessment and emergency response plan.
America's Water Infrastructure Act, electronic certification process for completion of risk and resilience assessments and emergency response plans. Introduction. This tutorial will guide you through the process of certifying your community water system or utilities risk and resilience assessment and emergency response plan to the U.S. EPA as required under Section 2013 of America's Water Infrastructure Act. This law establishes certification deadlines based on the population served by the utility and requires recertification to occur every 5 years. See U.S. EPA's America's Water Infrastructure Act's website for more information. Step 1. Account registration. From our America's Water Infrastructure Act certification page, select the Certify My Community Water Systems Risk and Resilience Assessment. Begin by registering your community water system. If you do not have an existing U.S. EPA SDS account, select Register a New Account to sign up. Otherwise, log in with your user ID and password. Once you register, future risk and resilience assessment or emergency response plan certifications can be completed in a few simple clicks. If you need assistance or have questions about the certification process, please reach out to the U.S. EPA via email at helpdesk@epa.cbs.net or call 888-890-1995. Step 2. PWSID number. Next, enter your community water system's PWSID number, including your 2-character primacy agency abbreviation, such as your state, territory, or tribal nation abbreviation, followed by the full 7-digit identification number with no spaces in between. Then select Continue. In the specific case of the state of Utah, users should spell out UTAH, followed by their 5-digit identification number with no spaces in between. Then select Continue. You'll see a pop-up to ensure your PWSID number is correct. Recheck the information you entered. Then select Continue again. Step 3. Terms and Conditions. Then read and accept the terms and conditions. Click the box certifying your acceptance, then click Accept. Step 4. Account Details. Now it is time to build your account profile. Enter the required information in the Account Owner section. Required fields are indicated with an asterisk. The system does require your first and last name, as well as your email address. Create your user ID and password. The password must be at least 8 characters long and contain at least 1 uppercase letter, 1 lowercase letter, and 1 number. Confirm your password, then select and complete the 3 security questions. The answers to these questions will be used to recover your password if it is forgotten. you may click the box on the bottom left-hand side of the screen to show passwords and answers to ensure that you have typed the correct entry. Note that you may create a PDF of your answers and keep a password-protected digital copy, or print your responses and keep them in a safe place. Now select Continue to move on to the next screen. Step 5. Organization or Community Water System Information. On this page, you'll encounter one of two scenarios. Scenario 1. If your community water system is listed below, you will need to click on the Community Water System name. Click the Select button next to your address. Next, click the Continue button at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Then click the Add New Address link. If your address information is incorrect, supply the correct information, then click Continue. Scenario 2. If your community water system is not listed below, enter your community water system's name in the search box. Click on your community water system's information, then click the Continue button at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. If problems persist in identifying the system, select the Enter a New Organization link, add your information, then click the Continue button. Alternatively, you may want to ensure your PWSID number is correctly entered by clicking the Program Identification link in the upper left-hand toolbar of this screen. When applicable, correct your information and continue. After walking through one of these two scenarios, click Continue. Step 6. Email Validation. After entering your community water system's information, you will receive an automated email from SCS Administrator in your email inbox containing an account validation code. Enter the validation code into the code field under your user ID and select Create Account. This code is only used for account creation, and you do not need to save it. Your account is now created. You will be directed to your dashboard where you will see your pending actions. A second email is also sent to your email inbox from SCS Administrator stating that your account has been activated. Step 7. Management of Vulnerability Assessments. Under the Public Health, Security, and Bioterrorism Preparedness and Response Act of 2002, your community water system likely submitted a vulnerability assessment to the US EPA. On this screen, you will be asked if you want the vulnerability assessment 1. Permanently disposed of by the US EPA, 2. Returned to you, or 3. If the scenario is not applicable. Make your choice and click Submit. Once you have certified your risk and resilience assessment, a pop-up message will appear on your screen asking if you want to certify your risk and resilience assessment now or later. You may select Certify Later if you want to use your original vulnerability assessment to inform your new risk and resilience assessment or for any other reason. This selection will return you to the home page. If you do select Certify Later, you will then be able to log into the system with just your user ID and password to complete the risk and resilience assessment or emergency response plan certification process. Please be advised that it may take up to 60 days for US EPA to return your vulnerability assessment. Step 8. Certification Selection Process. The next step is to certify your pending action. Your risk and resilience assessment or emergency response plan certification processes are very similar. So for demonstration purposes, we will choose to click on Certify Your Risk and Resilience Assessment. Step 9. Certification Statements. At this point, you will be presented with your standard risk and resilience assessment certification statement, which is based on the language in Section 2013 of America's Water Infrastructure Act. Your name, community water system's name, and population served will be auto-populated into the certification statement. Please review the statement. You may edit your community water system's name and its population served, then select the Certify Now button. Prior to certification, you may also print this page as a record for your files, and you will receive an acknowledgement of receipt email from the US EPA from email address scs@epa.cdx.net when your certification is completed. If you run into any issues, please click on the Contact Us link in the top right of your screen. Once you have certified your risk and resilience assessment, a pop-up message will appear on your screen asking if you want to certify your emergency response plan now or later. You may not be ready to certify your emergency response plan at this time, so you may select Certify Later. This selection will return you to the home page. If you are ready to certify your emergency response plan, select Certify Now. This will open a page that prompts you to enter your PWSID number. Use the Select button to enter your organization or community water system as you did under the Enter Organization Information process above. Once you have opened the certification page, as before, you will have the ability to edit your community water system's name and population served before submitting. Prior to certification, you may also print this page as a record for your files, and you will receive an acknowledgement of receipt email from US EPA, SCS at EPACDX.net once certification is completed. Step 10, Future Logins. Once these steps are completed, you will be able to simply log in with your established user ID and password to certify your risk and resilience assessment or emergency response plan in the future. If you encounter any issues, please email ewresilience@epa.gov. Call the help desk at 888-890-1995 as a second option, or select Contact Us on the login page to access the help desk via email, helpdesk@epacdx.net. The electronic certification process, there are several additional features that may help you with this process. On the Risk and Resilience Assessment and Emergency Response Plan Certification Statement pages, there will be a link to view your certification history. If you have an account but have forgotten your user ID, select the Forgot Your User ID hyperlink under the login boxes. This will take you to a screen to retrieve your user ID. Enter the email address you used to register your account and select Submit. You can then check your email for your user ID. Similarly, if you have forgotten your password, select the Forgot Your Password hyperlink under the login boxes. This will take you to a screen to reset your password. Enter your email address and user ID and select Submit and check your email for a link to reset your password. Thank you for completing this tutorial on how to complete the electronic certification process for completion of risk and resilience assessments and emergency response plans.
So hopefully that is useful for everyone. It's a lot of information, but also we like to show that tutorial video just in your certification process. You're stuck, you can access that YouTube video, which is on our website as well, and walk through your problem with the tutorial video. And there's also a PDF document that sort of lays out some of the commonly asked questions. And if it's really something's not working for you, you can email the help desk at the email provided on this slide, which will also be sent to you in an email, and that phone number there. Both will provide you access to our help desk for the AWIA certification process. While the online certification platform is the preferred method, your utility may also email the certification form. So you're going to complete the fillable PDF certification system that's on EPA's website, and we'll look at on the next slide, and email that statement to the email provided here, so we have support@epacdx.net. And so that certification statement is going to look like the one on your screen now. It's pretty basic, so community water system name, mailing address, etc. I do want to note, though, while you're going through this workshop, that it's really important that you provide the correct email address, because that's the only way we can reach out to you. So obviously, if you're emailing in the certification statement, we'll have your email. But if you're doing the for a minute. But if you're doing the electronic certification process and you you provide the wrong email address, then we won't have a way to send you that certification receipt that we've received your statement. So just be cautious and double check your email address when you provide it to us. As well, the PWS ID number is really important. So the only way that we can record that each PWS ID number certified completion of these requirements is using that number, but we have seen at times people have given us the wrong PWS ID number, or it was just slightly inaccurate. But again, please double check that that information you're providing is accurate, because this is how we are monitoring compliance. And so of course, when that happens, we're working with that system and double checking and going through the process via phone call or email or whatever information we do have. But just to mitigate any sort of problems or errors, we ask that you really double check the email address you provide and the PWS ID number you provide. So I just wanted to go over that just as a note during this section. There's also the option to complete the fillable PDF and print it out and then mail it to this address. And so we're still receiving mail at the data processing center. So if this is your preferred method, you can mail us. However, again, there won't be a way to confirm we've received your certification, but you can get an insured, tracking. Preferred tracking number and make sure that it was delivered to that address. So renewal and record maintenance, I mentioned this previously, but it's important that you retain records of your risk assessment emergency response plan for 5 years. So that's at the water utility. So you should have a copy of this for 5 years, and of course, retaining that in a safe manner for your utility, as it probably or certainly does contain some sensitive information. And in terms of certifier qualifications, the law does not stipulate who the certifying official must be, only that they be from the water utility. So each water utility can decide who that person is for the risk assessment emergency response plan. And so that can be decided during one of your team meetings, but it is important you have identified one person to do the certification, because we have also had instances where multiple people from one system certified completion of the risk assessment emergency response plan. And while that's not necessarily a problem in terms of compliance, it does make it difficult to identify the appropriate person to contact. It probably will mean that EPA will reach out to you and ask who is the proper certifying official, and that you identify one person. So when you're deciding who the certifier is, just make sure that's communicated across the board to reduce duplication where possible. So I'm just going to do a quick knowledge check here. What is the easiest option to use when certifying your risk assessment and emergency response plan? Great, yeah, so most of you said electronic submission, and the only reason that's the easiest option is because it provides you that receipt of the receipt that EPA received your certification, and then it does also provide you reminders of the upcoming 5-year recertification date. So that's why we refer to the online certification process sort of as the easiest option. While I'm here, I saw a question came in asking, it's from Robert Profit, asking if the recertification was based on the date that system certifies or what was listed in that table previously. And the 5-year recertification date is based on those specific dates laid out in the table that we reviewed previously. So it's a set date and not based on your initial certification date, because after so many years it would just be pretty hard to keep track of 5 years from your initial certification date. So those dates are set in stone and on EPA's website. There's another poll here. This is just related to something we get asked a lot, but do you manage utilities with multiple PWS ID numbers? Okay, great. So largely the attendees here today don't manage multiple PWS ID numbers, but for those people who do or might in the future, you do need to certify completion of the risk assessment emergency response plan for each PWS ID number. So that's sort of how it's written in the law, that you need to certify. So that certification form, you'll need to complete one per PWS ID number. And so in the electronic system, you can create one username and password and add individual systems under your username, but then you'll need to certify for each one individually. So for instance, if you're emailing in the certification form and you oversee 5 PWS ID numbers, you'll need to send in 5 different forms. And so that's how we're keeping records based on PWS ID number. So if you do manage more than one, you'll need to certify for the appropriate number of PWS ID numbers, not just the based on utility, but PWS ID number. So I know I repeated that a few times, but it is an important piece of information. So I wanted to make sure it was covered. As well, so now we're at the question and answer. So if you have some questions, please feel free to write them in, as always. But we're going to go through some commonly asked questions, and some of this will be review, but I'm going to try to hit on some of the most commonly asked questions and things that are sometimes confusing or overlooked. So this is just to reiterate, do I need to send a copy of the risk assessment or emergency response plan? You do not. You only need to certify that you've completed them in accordance with the legal requirements through that online certification portal, email, or US mail. Will my information be protected? So information submitted to the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency pursuant to Section 1433 of the Safe Drinking Water Act shall be protected from disclosure in accordance with the provisions of such sections as in effect on such a day. So in general, your information is protected, but please do note that EPA does have the authority to review the materials you've created. So the risk assessment emergency response plan in the future, the EPA could request access to those documents to review either for quality assurance or most likely for quality assurance, but just please do know that your information is protected from the public, but we can request access to those plans and assessments. So this question was asked as well. I must do this for the state I live in. Does that count? So that's normally asked with respect to the emergency response plan. And it's sort of a half and half answer. So part of it probably counts, the portion of the emergency response plan or risk assessment that meets the requirements under AWIA. But you will need to update it because likely it does not cover all of the requirements. So for the risk assessment, normally the previous risk assessments don't cover natural hazards, or they don't cover financial instruments or monitoring systems. So just to make sure it meets all the requirements under AWIA and that it includes any systems you've added since you previously conducted an assessment or an emergency response plan. And so we just went over this question about the multiple PWS ID numbers. I think that was clear, so I'm not going to go over that again. Sometimes we get asked about the impact AWIA has on transient non-community water systems or non-transient non-community water systems, and the short answer to this is that Section 2013 of AWIA only applies to community water systems, which are defined as a public water system that supplies water to the same population year-round. And again, those community water systems serving a population greater than 3,300. So is there guidance for small systems? And this is a twofold question. One is that for systems size 3,300 to 49,999, we will be rolling out that small systems checklist and guidance in June that I mentioned before. And at a later date, we will also be providing guidance to small water systems that serve less than 3,300 persons. So that portion is required by law to be provided by EPA to those small water systems or very small water systems servicing less than 3,300. But that will come out at a later date so as not to be confused with the compliance information that is the small systems checklist we're developing, VSAT, and the emergency response plan guidance and template. So if you have, if there's an instance where there's a new system coming online after the deadline for the estimated population size, we've been asked when is the initial risk assessment deadline for that facility, and it would be required to follow the deadline based on system size for that next 5-year recertification period. In response to the question about who is required to certify a risk assessment or emergency response plan, again, that's any designated utility representative. So they don't need to hold a specific rank in the utility, but they do need to be from the specific water utility. So for instance, this normally comes up in relation to contractors, so a contractor cannot certify on behalf of a water utility. How soon can you submit a certification? You can submit your certification as soon as possible. So at any time in the future. And this question was asked earlier, so what is specifically meant by financial infrastructure under the risk and resilience assessment requirements? And just to reiterate, we interpret financial infrastructure to mean utility, billing, and payment and financial account management systems, including those operated by a third party on behalf of a utility. Jeff went over this one just a little while ago. So will EPA be providing directive on mandatory components specific to the cybersecurity part of the emergency response requirements? And the short answer is no, that there aren't any mandatory components beyond what the law states. So he went over the portions of the cybersecurity, and that should be included in the emergency response plan, and then the malevolent acts portion of the risk assessment. But we do offer, if you want more information on cyber incident response planning or cybersecurity training, we do have materials on that, and we can provide that to you. So just know they exist if you're looking for more information on cybersecurity. And this question was just asked in a, I think, better way. So is a recertification based on when your system initially certifies, or is it based on specific 5-year dates? And so the quick answer is that the 5-year dates are based on the deadlines established in the law. So it's not based on any initial certification date. I don't know if I mentioned this, so this is a good point to bring up. So can I utilize the VSAT Web 2.0 tool to familiarize myself without being tied to a specific utility? And you can. So any individual can use VSAT Web 2.0 to develop a test utility and familiarize themselves with the tool. And so I've done that myself. So I've developed a utility. I call it Doc utility. I put in a zip code of where I grew up, mess around with it, so I can understand how it works and how certain data entry looks, and just sort of all the functionalities. So if you're interested in developing a test utility and familiarizing yourself with the tool prior to a team meeting, or if you're the one responsible for conducting the risk assessment, you can absolutely do that. And then if you have any additional questions while you're going through VSAT or the emergency response plan guidance and template, you can reach out to us at dwresilience@epa.gov, and that email will be provided to you again towards the end of the presentation. And here, before we move into any questions that came up recently, we just want to make note that EPA does not require water systems to use any designated standards, methods, or tools to conduct the risk assessment or prepare the emergency response plan as required under AWIA Section 2013. So while we've provided you some of the tools and resources EPA has created to assist water utilities in compliance or in becoming compliant with AWIA Section 2013, you can use any tool that works for you and that meets all of the requirements for the risk assessment emergency response plan. So regardless of the use of any standard method or tool, you know, at the end of the day, the water system is responsible for ensuring that its risk and resilience assessment and the ERP fully address all the requirements. So whatever tools you use, just ensuring they meet the requirements. And that goes as well for the 7 steps to the risk assessment, you know, identifying a lead and building a team. You know, those are just suggestions and they're not required. So just to make sure that that's clear for everyone. And were there any questions that came up?
Yes, yeah, there was one, and it was, how did EPA come up with the 3,300 person cutoff for the population service size?
So I don't know the background on that that cutoff. Jeff, when this came about, where the 3,300 number originated from?
So EPA did not pass AWIA. EPA is involved with implementing it, but we did not have a hand in the law itself. As far as the 3,300 community water systems, similar to the Bioterrorism Act, we could do a little bit more research, but the Bioterrorism Act was the same cutoff. So I assume they were following along those guides. But again, it wasn't EPA who came up with that cutoff. It's part of the law, and we're here to implement it, if that makes sense. And we can do some further research on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So I think you said it best, so I'll leave it at if there's no further questions,
I actually have one more, real quick.
We're going to move on to AWIA. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were just, it was about the checklist for the 3,300 to the 50,000. So which website address should they check for that to be posted? I know it won't be posted until June, but will it be posted on the AWIA website? Is that correct?
Yes, it'll definitely be posted on the AWIA Section 2013 website. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That would
That's
be
it for now. Great.
Great. So those are all great questions. I hope you're feeling good moving forward. Before we wrap up today, we're going to also go over AWIA Section 2018. And so to do that, we're going to move on to Jeff again.
Okay. Last presentation of the day, and we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to leave 2013 behind and jump into AWIA Section 2018. And basically what you're going to see from 2018, sorry, just getting rid of these pop-ups here. So what you're going to see ultimately from Section 2018 and the amendments are really a beneficial change for the water sector, and you'll see shortly how that is. But before we jump into it, let me just provide you with some background information. So Section 2018 specifically focuses on spills and releases, as I indicated in my earlier presentation, whether they are intentional or accidental, and the potential contamination that could be caused to a community water system. Now, while most provisions of AWIA that affect the water sector amends the Safe Drinking Water Act, such as 2013, Section 2018 actually amends the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, or EPCRA, and I will be using that acronym because it is a long one. So EPCRA, Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. So the overall purpose of these amendments is to really mitigate the risk of contamination to sources of drinking water, specifically the threat of spills or releases to your source water. So Section 2018 was motivated by several spills that occurred within the past several years. The most importantly, or in particular, was the 2014 Elk River spill in West Virginia, where I'm sure most of you recall this incident. A do not use order was in place for 10 days. 369 individuals sought medical care at hospital EDs, emergency departments, and then the financial cost of the incident was more than $72 million. I've given 45 minutes presentations on the Elk River contamination incident, but this was definitely what spurred some of these amendments here. And again, I'm sure most of you recall that incident. So again, background information. What is EPCRA? Well, EPCRA was signed into law in 1986, and it was created to help communities plan for chemical emergencies and also to address concerns regarding the environmental safety hazards posed by the storage and also the handling of toxic chemicals. The community regulated by EPCRA are the facilities. So it's the actual facilities that produce, use, or store hazardous chemicals in quantities above a certain specific threshold quantity. Now, EPCRA is administered by US EPA's Office of Emergency Management. And it's also implemented by the state emergency response commissions and then the local emergency planning committees. And one thing I like to do here is just hit the brakes, and because I know a majority of you, or some of you, don't know what a state emergency response commission is. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with a CERC, or State Emergency Response Commission, so the governor of each state has designated a CERC that is responsible for implementing the EPCRA provisions within its state. So each state, and the CERC duties include the following: establishing procedures for receiving and processing public requests for information collected under EPCRA. All right, the CERC's also, the duties include reviewing local emergency response plans. The CERC also duties involve designating local emergency planning districts, as well as appointing the local emergency planning committees, or the LEPCs, for each district, and then supervising the activities of the LEPC. So I always like to provide that information for those of you who aren't familiar with CERCs, who are, actually the ones who are implementing it, PCs. So now the Water Security Division, where Victoria and I reside, works closely with OEM to help the state drinking water agencies and community water systems implement the requirements of Section 2018, since our division already has a working relationship with the primacy agencies in the water sector as well. So we're working closely with the Office of Emergency Management. I apologize for the acronym there. So just note that while this is a federal regulation, EPA does not have enforcement authority over the CERCs and the LEPCs. So EPCRA. So there are many or several sections in EPCRA, and we're only going to focus on the two sections in bold on this slide that were amended through 2018, and that includes Section 304, emergency notifications, and Section 312, which is chemical inventories, and I'll talk about those in more detail in the next few slides, but just note that there are several sections of EPCRA. We're just focusing on the two that were amended under Section 2018. Okay, now that you have that background information on EPCRA, I want to talk about Section 304 first, and the amendments required under AWIA Section 2018. So first and foremost, what is EPCRA Section 304? Well, Section 304 requirements cover approximately 355 extremely hazardous substances and then more than 700 hazardous substances subject to CERCLA, or the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, also known as Superfund. And again, I will be using that acronym CERCLA. So Section 304 requires facilities, right? It requires facilities who handle these chemicals to immediately, within 15 minutes, notify the LEPC and CERC, or TURC, which is the Tribal Emergency Response Commission for the tribal nations, if there is a release into the environment of a hazardous substance that is equal to or exceeds minimum reportable quantities set in regulations. Now, the report from facilities to the TURCs should be via phone call, radio, or in person. For CERCLA releases, also require notification to the NRC, or National Response Center. Emergency notifications for transportation-related incidents can be met by calling 911. So what does this notification from the facility need to include? So again, when the facility, this is section 304 of EPCRA, prior to the amendment. So, well, still part of it, but when section 304, so when the facility contacts the CERC, here's what they need to notify of the spill is the chemical name or identity of any substance involved, an indication of whether the substance is on that extremely hazardous substance list, an estimate of the quantity released, the time and duration of the release, the medium or media into which the release occurred, any known or anticipated acute or chronic health risks associated with the release, proper precautions to take, including evacuation, and then obviously contact information, name, telephone number for further information. So this is the information that needs to be provided from the facility to the CERC or the TURC in LEPC. And then, as soon as practicable, a written follow-up notice must be provided to the CERC and TURC as well from the facility. And the written notice shall provide updates from the information that was provided originally in the previous slide, as well as additional information. So the written follow-up comes after. It includes actions taken to respond to and contain the release, any known or anticipated acute or chronic health risks, and where appropriate, advice regarding medical attention necessary for exposed individuals. So there's the initial notification as well as a written follow-up. That is section 304. Now, how is EPCRA section 304 amended under AWIA section 2018? Again, you'll find these very beneficial to the water sector. Okay, so the amended section 304 now requires the CERCs who receive the information from the facilities in 304, once they get that initial notification from a facility, to notify the State Drinking Water Primacy Agency of a release of an EPCRA extremely hazardous substance or a CERCLA hazardous substance. So now the CERC or TURC, LEPC, that received the information from the facility, now under 2018, the amendments must notify the State Drinking Water Primacy Agency, and this includes both the initial prompt notification as well as the follow-up reporting. And basically, the same information provided by the facility to the CERC needs to be provided to the primacy agency. Again, and then as soon as practicable, I'm not going to go through the slide because I just went to it. It's the same information. The CERC or TURC shall provide the written follow-up to the primacy agency, which contains the same information provided from the facility within the release. Okay, so it's the same written follow-up. So the amendment now is makes it clear now it goes from the facility to the CERC or TURC to the primacy agency. Then, now, if the Drinking Water Primacy Agency receiving a notification from the CERC or TURC, so now the primacy agency receives it, they must promptly forward the initial notice and all the information provided to any community water system whose source waters are affected by that release. So now the information is coming down to the affected community water system. And also the primacy agency will forward the written follow-up emergency notice provided to the affected community water system. So now, again, through the amendments, the CERC or TURC is notifying the primacy agency, who in turn is notifying the community water system. Just a note here, if the state does not have a drinking water primacy agency, and that's Wyoming, doesn't have a primacy agency, District of Columbia, and then certain tribal nations do not, then the CERC or TURC provides the information directly to the community water system itself. All right, so this next slide just provides an overview of all the amendments to Section 304 that I just discussed. And starting in the left-hand side at the top in the orangish-yellow type of box there, the release occurs, and the facility provides all the information required under Section 304 to the CERC or TURC. Okay, that's Section 304. Then the amendments, the CERC or TURC now must notify through EPCRA 304, promptly notify the State Drinking Water Primacy Agency, who in turn notifies the community water system, the affected community water system, whose source water is potentially affected. And again, the bottom part there just says if there's no primacy agency, the CERC or TURC notification goes directly to the community water system. So basically, again, beneficial to the water sector. This notification is is further being communicated to the privacy agencies and then to the community water systems. And that is section 304. And maybe I'll stop there for any questions. I'll do my best to answer questions on this section. Dawn Eisen on our team and Steve Algar on our team are the leads for this. So I will do my best to answer a question. If not, I promise you I will follow up with an answer. So with that, are there any questions, Mackenzie?
Yeah, we have one. There's a lot of acronyms in this section. So could you just clarify again what RAMCAP stands for?
Victoria, that's a question towards you.
Okay, yeah, it was risk and management. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Let me just double check real quick and then I will pipe back in.
Okay, we'll follow up again on that one, Mackenzie.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
Nope, that's
Oh,
it.
I got it. It's risk analysis and management for critical asset protection. I'm sorry, I always just say RAMCAP. So that's what it stands for. Valid question, though.
Great, thank you. And that's all for right now.
Okay. So that's 304. So under, well, that's after section 304 and the amendments to it under AWIA section 2018. Now let's jump into section 312 and see what the amendments required under AWIA section 2018 for section 312. So under OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, regulations require facilities to maintain a material safety data sheet, now called a safety data sheet. And I don't know how I'll ever get used to that because I'm so used to MSDS, but the MSDS is now called a safety data sheet for any hazardous chemicals stored or used in the workplace. And approximately 500,000 products are required to have these safety data sheets, or let's say SDS. And section 311 specifically requires facilities handling or storing OSHA hazardous chemicals to submit an SDS for each of these chemicals to the CERC, LEPC, and the local fire department. Now, EPCRA section 312 requires facilities handling or storing OSHA hazardous chemicals to submit an annual chemical inventory. This would include chemical identity, quantities, and locations of the facility to the CERC, LEPC, and local fire departments. So 312 requires the facilities handling or storing the OSHA hazardous chemicals to submit an annual inventory, usually by March 1st of every year. They need to submit that. And the inventory form includes the chemical name or common name as indicated on the safety data sheet, an estimate and ranges of the maximum amount of the chemical present at any time during the preceding calendar year. So again, by March 1st of every year, then the average daily amount, a brief description of the manner of storage of the chemical, the location of the chemical at the facility, and finally an indication of whether the owner elects to withhold location information from disclosure, and that's due to the public for proprietary reasons of their chemical. So now that's section 312, 311, 312. How is it amended under AWIA section 2018, and how does this benefit the water sector? So the amended section 312 now requires the CERCs and the LEPCs to provide effective community water systems with that chemical inventory data collected under Tier 2 for the system's source water area upon request. Right? So community water systems, so essentially what does that mean for an effective community water system? It means now they can request this information, but what we mean by affected community water system, it's defined as a community water system that receives supplies of drinking water from a source water protection area delineated under CIDWA, in which the facility that is required to prepare and submit an inventory form under EPCRA 312 is located. So within your source water protection area, in the community water system source water protection area, if one of these facilities is located, you'll be able to, upon receipt of request, the CERC or LEPC will provide the information or request the information from the facility and forward any information received to the community water system. Bottom line, community water system now has access to this information about these OSHA chemicals that could potentially be in your source water protection area. And this really is a beneficial change for the water sector, because in the absence of this amendment, access to Tier 2 chemical inventories was really subject to interpretation by the CERCs and LEPCs, and water utilities were not always successful in obtaining the data they needed without going through hoops and extensive measures, and such as requesting data. They may have to request data by facilities, so go through facility to facility to get the information. Or the data was provided to the community water system, but in formats not well suited to analysis, such as scanned hard copy records. So essentially now, under the amendment to AWIA, community water systems, based on the request, can now have access to this information. And this gets back to what I was talking about within the emergency response plan, about identifying any sort of chemical facilities or industries, broken down storage tanks, or any sort of anything that could potentially contaminate your source, to make sure that you've identified it in your emergency response plan so that you can respond to it as appropriate. And even going as far as having contacts for those facilities as well is very important. And even reaching out to them prior to it and saying, hey, industry ABC, this is the water utility. Just wanted to call, and I've seen this many times now, and we're doing what we've done. We're doing these spill response workshops. We did one in Massachusetts probably a year ago, where we do bring in industry. We do bring in the water utilities and emergency managers, privacy agency, to discuss spills. And industry has always been, as far as we've seen, very cooperative to help out and to explain what their sort of response mechanisms are for a spill. So this is good information. These amendments really are beneficial to the water sector at now having access to this information. I'll stop there before we hit the final slides here with the connection between sections 2013 and 2018 for any questions. Again, I'll do my best to answer. If not, we will follow up.
Nothing right now.
Any questions? None right now. Okay. Well, if there's any questions in the future, I'll provide you with some contact information, and you have Victoria and my contact as well. So basically what I'd like to do is now mention the connections between section 2018 and 2013. And 2013 is what we've been focusing on the majority of the day. Bottom line here is it's important to encourage community water systems utilities to become members of their LEPC to ensure that the community emergency response plan includes community water systems that also handle extremely hazardous substances such as chlorine, right? And remember that systems are required to coordinate with their LEPC to the extent possible under section 2013. And overall, becoming part of the LEPC would make it easier for obtaining the Tier 2 information, knowing who is part of the LEPC, how to obtain that information, having a name, having contact information, makes it easier to obtain the Tier 2 data. And it also helps to ensure they get emergency release notification under 304 that may affect their water systems. So here are some products and outreach information on section 2018. So for further information on what I talked about today, we did publish a fact sheet to provide guidance on 2018 for the CERCs, the Turks, and the LEPCs. And as a matter of fact, we're actually doing some workshops. We just conducted a workshop in Region 1 with bringing together the CERCs from the various 6 New England states, as well as EPAs and the privacy agencies, to discuss some of this information. So we're trying to provide or do some workshops with the CERCs as well on it. We also published a companion fact sheet for privacy agencies and community water systems on the EPCA revisions required by 2018. We published a list of frequently asked questions, and then, as we're doing today, providing webinars and in-person trainings on it as well. So there is products and additional information out there on 2018 that you can go and research. And with that, I guess I'll turn it over to any questions, final questions on 2018.
Yeah, we had one come in. So they asked, what if your treatment plant is in a different town? Should you reach out to that town's LEPC?
Or in a different state? That's an excellent question, and I apologize, I should have mentioned that. So yes, you would have to reach out to multiple LEPCs, or if your source happens to be in different states, you'd have to reach out to multiple. That's just the way it is. You'll just have to reach out to the different LEPCs and search to get that information. Excellent question.
Great, thank you. And that's all the questions we have right now.
Okay. So just the contact information, so as I mentioned earlier, Dawn Eisen from the Water Security Division and Steve Allgaier as well are taking point on assisting on 2018. So you can contact them, or you can contact Victoria or myself, and we'll be more than happy to answer the question. If not, we'll pass it along. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Victoria.
Awesome, thanks, Jeff. Can we just go to the next slide? So just wanted to wrap up with a review of America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. So some of the main points here. So it amends the Safe Drinking Water Act, Section 1433. We talked about that at the top of the workshop, sort of replacing the previous vulnerability assessment that was required under the Bioterrorism Act of 2002. And so it requires an initial risk and resilience assessment and emergency response plan to be completed and then certified by set deadlines based on the utility service size. So it requires only the certification of completion of those assessments and plans. Again, based on the utility service size, it includes an assessment of risks from malevolent acts and natural hazards. So not just malevolent acts as was previously required. A utility must recertify every 5 years based on set deadlines set in the law. And then EPA is the primary agency responsible for enforcing Section 1433. So that's a basic overview of Section 2013, just to wrap up our workshop. I'm not seeing any other questions right now. Can we move to the final slide, Jeff? And if you have any questions, please reach out to us at this email address, dwresilience@epa.gov. We've also linked to the AWIA website, where you can find webinars, workshops, and where we'll post that small systems checklist and guidance for the risk assessment that's going to come out in June. So we'll have that for you as well. And just before we go, I got a message from Massachusetts saying that Massachusetts Systems, the primacy agency, has spill notification protocols already developed with the CERC, and these protocols include notification to public water systems for